If there is no kata, it is not karate-do. It's just kicking and punching. Hello everyone, I'm Tim. Did you know karate competition started at about the same time it came to Japan? In the wake of the 2020 Olympics and karate's debut there, I thought I'd weigh in on the whole debate on karate competition. As usual, we'll take a look at how it all began, and as usual, this means we'll have to go back to the beginning of the 20th century, at about the same time karate got introduced to the Japanese public. Some of the references in this video come from Patrick and Yuriko McCarthy's book, Ancient Okinawan Martial Arts, Volume 2, Koryo Uchinari. Well, it didn't start exactly at the same time, but it was pretty close. Some of the first people to think of karate as a competitive activity were actually some of the founders of today's WKF styles, namely Otsuka Hironori of Wadoryu and Mabu Nikenwa of Shitoryu. Even Motobu Choki was known for using his karate competitively, although this was more to pay his bills than for competitive glory. I already told you the story of Motobu's competition days in a previous video. I do have to point out that even though they pioneered it, these masters were not in favor of karate becoming nothing more than a sport. They all urged to keep practicing and exploring kata and all that came with that. To quote Shoshin Nagamine, I don't mean to suggest that I have a totally negative opinion about karate-do's competitive element. It's just that I feel it is too shallow. Regardless of whether it is Okinawa, the Japanese mainland, or the world in general, Ju-Kumite ignores the principles to which kata apply. Simply put, Ju-Kumite should reflect the kata because kata is the origin of karate-do. If there is no kata, it is not karate-do. It's just kicking and punching. Mabuni did not like competitive fighting, as he thought it brought out the worst in people. But even he admitted it had some good points. In any case, early karate competition was in no way the same as it is today, simply because sport as a pastime is a fairly recent activity. Before the 20th century, there just simply wasn't much sport to speak of, outside of the odd game here and there. Now, we could explore this a lot further, but that is something for another day. Martial arts were at their core meant for self-protection and or self-perfection. As times started gradually changing, however, the need started to arise for pastimes and games. So, existing games were turned into sports, and new sports were developed. Any activity that offered a chance to test oneself against another gained in popularity. It was thanks to people like Baron Pierre de Coubertin that the love of the game really got its beginnings, when he organized the first edition of the modern Olympic Games in 1896. He said, "L'important dans la vie, ce n'est point le triomphe, mais le combat. L'essentiel n'est pas d'avoir vaincu, mais de s'être bien battu." Or, the important thing in life is not the triumph, but the fight. The main thing is not to have won, but to have fought well. You can see that he used the term fighting instead of playing. From that idea, one can argue that the martial arts and sports are extremely closely related. Back to karate competition. From my point of view, this has always been a highly debated subject. There have always been karate practitioners who loved the idea of testing their skills against other karate practitioners, and there have always been those who think karate competition is the worst thing to ever happen to our martial art. I find myself on both ends of this debate on different moments in my life. While I personally prefer the practical approach to karate, I have spent about a decade as an active referee and also as a coach in WKF affiliated tournaments. Looking back at this time, I can't say competition karate is such a bane for karate in general. I would even dare to say that non-competitive karate has a lot to learn from competitive karate. I feel that people from the latter group are usually better at uniting under a common goal, which is a great asset when trying to preserve anything worth preserving. I do strongly believe the greatest threat to karate has a lot to do with competition. However, not the competition you might be thinking of. I'm talking about the competition between those who are in favor of competitive karate and those who are opposed. It seems that many groups of karateka don't see eye to eye on a great number of things, which is fine, everyone's entitled to their opinion. However, these differences in opinion often lead to a complete divide between the people who, to any outsider, should be united in their love for the art. Now, what I'm about to say will not be directed to those of you that don't like WKF Kumite or the rules of point-based sparring. Like I said, I personally prefer practical over competitive karate. You see, I read a lot of the reactions that circled the various comment sections about the athletes in the recent Olympics. These athletes, many of whom sacrificed everything to be eligible to compete on the level they're on, deserve nothing but respect for their efforts. Yet many of us, mere mortals, love nothing better than to take cheap shots when they fail or even when their success is not to our liking. Is this Bushido? The way of the warrior? Aren't we better in this with all our onegai shimasus and our high senseis? If we truly want to aspire to be the honorable warriors our Facebook avatars seem to reflect, we really need to stop being the keyboard warriors and start honoring those who step up where we can't or won't. I'm sorry for this mini rant, but this is just a sensitive subject for me. As I mentioned before, I feel like martial arts and sports are closely related. And in that vein, I feel the same way about soldiers compared to athletes. Both sacrifice everything in their pursuits, in both cases even their lives, and often in both cases for honor and glory and for their homes. See, the main difference seems to be that soldiers do it to defend their country, but even there they aren't so different at heart. When you think there is such a thing as the Olympic truce, the idea that there should be an armistice while the games are being held. In short, even though I'm not the greatest proponent of WKF-based kumite, I do strongly believe that it should exist. I 100% support the idea of Olympic karate and hope it will return in some form. Simply because of the fact that the rising tide raises all ships, it gets people acquainted with karate, might push some people to enter the dojo, after which it's our responsibility to teach them the way. How about we try to do it this way from now on? Next week, we're doing something else, and we might finally enter the dojo of Kaniuchi. Can't wait for your reactions. How about you guys? Where do you find yourself in this debate, and why? Did you enjoy the karate part of the Olympics? Leave a comment down below and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. For now, let me wish you a wonderful day. And as always, thanks for watching.
Composure. And Sandra Sanchez makes her way once again to the starting position for her second kata in the final. This has not happened before with the new system. The World Olympic standing 1. A chosen kata for this second tiebreak is Suprempe. Very different kata in relation to that of Chatnyara Kushanku. Once more, that wonderful composure being demonstrated. This is the 5th kata that Sanchez has performed here in the Nippon Budokan in Tokyo.
Wow.
Fabulous speed. The transitions from one technique to another is excellent. What is amazing that neither of these athletes would have had to really consider seriously that there would be a draw in the final like this. A tie break required.
Yes, it is good.
Wow! Wonderful turn again. The transition into that Maitobigeri was exceptional. Now, the bow completes the kata.